thing is just rallying me, man. All right, Addicts, we're gonna do some. Oh, we got another one on there. All right, Addicts, thanks for tuning in today. And in this tutorial, we're gonna show you guys how to land more kokanee. All right, guys, we just landed a couple beautiful kokanee as you saw there in the intro, but I can tell you what, we've all been there, where we've all shown up to the lake, we've gone out fishing, we've gotten just a few bites when it comes to kokanee trout fishing, lost them all, and it just seems like sometimes we're only landing like 20, 30, 40%. And in this video here, we're gonna talk about some additional tips and techniques and certain ways that you guys can hopefully land some more kokanee. And let me start with the rod and the reel. Now, I know when it comes to kokanee rods, we always want to talk about having the softest, lightest, thinnest little tips that you possibly can have. But one thing about kokanee fishing and the materials that we use in this day and age with the new technologies that we have with rods is you actually don't need that compared to what we needed 40, 50 years ago, right? A couple things when it comes to the actions on these rods. You want to have a rod that's soft, but you want to have it actually be fairly strong and have a little bit of backbone. And here's why. We use a lot of these big dodgers. I got a Brad's Kokanee dodger right here, but this puts a lot of weight and a lot of drag. And if I have a rod that bends all the way to the handle, I don't keep tension on the fish. And I know that it seems like, okay, if I reel too far and too fast at any given time, I'm gonna rip the hooks out. But another reason why I know we lose a lot of kokanee is because the fish have a very fast, short, aggressive head shake. So they're always whipping around like that. If the rod's not providing any tension, you got that big dodger hanging on you, the fish shoots towards you a little bit, it puts slack in that line and the fish is able to shake those hooks out. So what I've noticed is rods that actually have a little bit more backbone and aren't the whippiest, tiniest little things out there, I end up having a better landing ratio with. And another thing that's also been occurring the last few years is that we've really simplified our setups with the lines that we're using. I've got some of the new Addicted Tough line right here in the cloud gray. And basically what I'm using is a 30-pound test, but because I want to know what that fish is doing and how important it is to feel what that fish is doing during the fight, I'm going to talk about that here in just a few seconds, I can get away with using a braided non-stretch line, which is honestly going to be a lot more simpler to use, and I'm going to have less of an opportunity to nick and damage this line, especially when things get crazy and the rods get thrown around the boat and they get caught on downrigger wires and tangle and all sorts of nonsense. If I'm using a braided line, the durability is much better than using like a 10-pound mono or anything like that. But because of the rod action that I'm using and the technique that I'm fighting, I'm not going to lose any more fish because I'm using the braided line. Now when it comes to reels, you're just going to want to use your personal preference as long as it's got a smooth drag and it isn't too big, because a lot of times with like much bigger reels, it's really hard to slip down your drag to where you're going to want it exactly set for kokanee. I prefer these new Akuma convectors here in the size 100. Great new little reel on the market, been absolutely fantastic for kokanee, and it's got a very smooth drag for help landing these fish. Now my first tip for landing kokanee doesn't even start with any of the rods or reel or you as the angler. It starts with your hooks. What I'm using here are two quality size 4 hooks brought to you by Mustad. These are actually a couple new kokanee hooks that we've been kind of designing and playing with. As you can see, they have a nice long point, a nice tiny sharp hook, and a really nice barb on there. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna help keep those fish pinned on there. I've got them spaced just a little bit apart, so hopefully one can stick them in the mouth and the other one can stick them in the top of the head or the fin. But if you don't have a good hookup on your fish, it doesn't matter how light or how soft you fight those fish, you're still gonna lose them because kokanee have inherently soft mouths. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the technique on how you want to fight them and how you actually want to pick up the rod. I believe that the majority of the fish that are lost in my boat is because the rod pickup is too aggressive. So I'm going to demonstrate right now what I'm looking for in a good rod pickup on a bite. So I've got my rod bouncing here, and the reason why you see that tapping is just from the Brad's Kokanee dodger. It's putting off that good vibration, attracting the fish in. But let's say this fish finally decides to come around and grab this bait. You're gonna see the rod bite, you're gonna see the rod bite, and then it's gonna pull down, and then he's gonna be shaking on there. A huge mistake that I see a lot of the salmon anglers do especially is when they pick that rod up, they want to lift into the fish, and they want to feel the fish. And a lot of that comes from a lot of guys at salmon angle, or maybe they walleye angle, and you want to make sure you get a good solid hook set so you pick up the line. But the problem with that is that if you're coming from this lower position here, and the fish finally bit, he's hooked up, and I come back here to tighten that line up, and I lift that rod this high, I just moved that rod 10 feet, or that rod tip, excuse me, 10 feet during the time that the kokanee is literally fighting the hardest he possibly can. He just got hooked up, he's super hot, he's super fresh, he doesn't know what's going on. And at that moment, when he is hanging himself on the hook, I am pulling through him just to see that if I can feel him. It's not what you want to do. Let me show you guys what I'll generally try to do is when I start to get that bite, boom, 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 he's on there, I'll pick up the rod and almost try to keep the rod in the same position where I'm fighting the fish, and let the rod be the shock absorber and let the rod do the work. That hard pickup just absolutely loses, I think, more fish than anything else. All right, guys, so you've gotten the bite and you did that nice subtle pickup, just enough to where you can lift it out of the rod holder and then let the fish decide what it wants to do. If it's pulling real hard, I'm not gonna be lifting back like I'm wanting to do like a salmon set. I'm just gonna let the rod be the shock absorber. But now what do you do after you start to fight the fish? So, I've always said the guys that pick up and they do something called the auto reel, it's generally bad news, because once again, you're reeling and you're pulling on that fish when the fish is fighting the hardest. So the guys that pick up the rod and just start reeling, it's generally not what you want to be doing. And I know you can set your drags real light, but I actually do like to have my drag set a little bit tighter, so when I have the opportunity when the fish isn't fighting that hard to reel him in a little quicker, I can do it, because the less time that he spends on that hook before I net him, the more of a chance of actually having to land the fish. So if the fish is bit, I've picked up the rod and he's fighting hard, I'm gonna let him fight until I start to feel him back off a little bit. Now, one of two things is happening when the rod starts to lighten up. He can either A, be coming at me, and I'm gonna wanna keep the line brought up to keep that tension on the hook that's going to keep the hooks in the fish's mouth, or B, the fish is starting to gas out a little bit. And kokanee are pretty notorious for fighting really, really hard and then gassing out and taking a breather and then getting reeled in a little ways and then picking up again and kind of getting their energy back and then fighting hard again. It's during those moments I don't want to be doing the auto reel and I don't want to be pulling back on them. So a lot of it is timing. So fish bites, he's fighting hard, I'm letting him fight hard, I'm letting him do it. Oh, he's backed off a little bit, I'm gonna work him in while I can. And as long as he's letting me work him in, I'm just gonna continue to reel. Now another thing, if you ever see when the Brad's kokanee dodger is getting a little bit closer to the boat, you see it come up on the surface. If it's up on the surface and skiing along, that fish is still there, because basically the only time that you're gonna see that happen is if a fish is on the other end and it's planing out the dodger. If the fish is gone and you've lost the fish, the dodger is going to want to spin in the water without that weight on the back of it, right? So when you're reeling it in, if you see it spinning, fish is gone, don't worry about it. But if you see the opportunity where that dodger gets on top of the surface and starts skiing in, that's a great time to kind of speed up your reel a little bit and just ski him all the way to the boat. That fish is just kind of meandering by there. He's gassed out. It's a good opportunity to suck a lot of that line up and try to get him in the net. Now another thing during the fight too is one thing I'm not a real big proponent of is putting the boat in neutral and letting my gear drift. Now, a lot of times when we're out here kokanee fishing, especially early season, we're looking for really tight schools. So when I hook a fish up, I don't want to lose the opportunity on not hooking additional fish up on my other gear that's still fishing by putting the boat in neutral. Now, yes, I could get a bite, I could put the boat in neutral and the gear might be falling down and that might entice a strike. But for the most part, I don't want to slow down my troll. And so what I'll do is I'll just kind of keep fighting that fish as I'm trolling along, hoping my other rod's hooked up. And also if I keep moving forward, it's gonna help keep that tension that I talked about on the rods, but not enough to where it's gonna rip the fish off. Now another thing that can help you guys that are using a lot of downriggers when you're trying to catch kokanee and trying to land more, I don't wanna have the lightest, softest clip that I can, because for two reasons. One, if you get a short strike or you get a fish that come up and just nip the bait off, it might be enough to release the clip and then I'm just resetting the downrigger and I'm not really fishing. But two, if I have a little bit of a stronger clip that I have to release and I don't generally let the fish release, when the fish comes up and grabs the bait and he shakes the head, he's hopefully gonna get both hooks in him and they're gonna get really pinned in him. And then I can come by and release the hook. Now, I am gonna set the downrigger clip to where if a fish really comes at it and does a very hard strike, or it's a larger kokanee, it can eventually rip it off the downrigger clip, but I want to be able to be in control of releasing that downrigger clip and not having that fish do it just as light as he can. And then of course, fighting the kokanee is the same, except with one exception, is that when there is a fish on there, I'm gonna reel down, give a pop, but there's always a little bit of slack in that line from the line coming straight down and then going back to the kokanee. So one thing I'm gonna wanna do, release the downrigger, pick it up to where I start to feel him. Chances are he's gonna be fighting real hard at that moment. And then I'm gonna wanna let him do it till he starts to gas out. The second he does, I'm gonna start working him back into the boat. Oh, maybe we'll get to show you guys right here how to land one. So I picked it up, fish is fighting hard. I'm not reeling, I'm letting the rod be the shock absorber. See how I'm doing? I'm no reeling right now. He is really pulling hard. This rod is really great for feeling the fish fight. I'm gonna let him do it. Sometimes it takes a little while if they're a real nice kokanee. Okay, he's starting to back off there a little bit. I'm gonna work him in. Oh, yep. There he, oh, he backed off a little bit. Man, this one's a good one. So he's gonna go crazy. The other thing is too, is if you're not in too big of a hurry when you're reeling in these kokanee, I truly believe that that kokanee out there splashing and going crazy and making all that noise and movement out there, it's attracting kokanee to the other gear that's still currently fishing. Man, he is just going nuts. He is going crazy. There we go. Working him in. He's kind of backed off a little bit. Now that he's backing off, I'm working him. See, I'm reeling now. He's just kind of coming to. He's just starting to ski. See that blade skiing on top there? Look at, he's skiing. Oh, now he's fighting again. I'm gonna back off just a second. He's fighting, I'm backing off. I'm keeping the tension though. Keeping tension is super important. Nope, he's gassing up again. And see how he's going easy and that blade is sliding? Brandon, give me a good net job on this for the guys at home. There he is. Just like that, guys.
That's why we use long nets.
Yep, that's why we use long nets. Nice kokanee in the boat. Not the biggest one in the world, but man, he sure put up a fight for you guys to show you just that timing on when to not reel as hard, let the fish, let the rod do the work. And then when he starts to back off, I'm gonna start working him into the boat. And look at that, guys. He was just barely hooked. Had that little mustad kokanee hook just stuck right in him. But fortunately, the barb held and I didn't pull too hard, landed the fish. All right, guys, I hope these tips and techniques help you guys land a few more fish, because everyone's been there on really good days where it just seems like every kokanee comes to the boat, but we've also been out there on those real tough days where you want to make every hookup count. If you guys really liked what you see here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on those bell notifications. Also, check out our newest and latest tutorial right here. And don't forget to comment down below whether you like this tutorial or if it helped you, or any suggestions for new tutorials, and be the winner of the comment of the day guy like you see down below. We'll see you guys on the water.